The final ordinary session of the 5th Parliament of the Pan-African Parliament, the PAP, will take place from the 21st of May, with deliberations of this session to be guided by the African Union theme for 2021, Year of the Arts, Culture and Heritage. Levers for building Africa that we want. Now, this session will also see the election of a new president and vice presidents. A little earlier, I spoke to the clerk of the Pan-African Parliament, Vipya, Harawa. Interesting session coming up shortly next week, one that's going to perhaps change the look of the Pan-African Parliament.
This is a very unique session that we're about to commence. The 4th session of the 5th Parliament. And it's unique in 3 ways, perhaps in more ways, but particularly 3 ways. We haven't held a session in the last 18 months. So this will be our first session in 18 months. It is also unique because it comes with an unprecedented number of new MPs to be sworn in. We are looking at around 120 new MPs to be sworn in just in one session, and that has not happened before. The third reason why it is particularly unique is that we are having elections for the 6th Parliament of the Pan-African Parliament. We're having elections for president, for vice president. The 2 offices combined constitute the Bureau of the Pan-African Parliament. So it's 1 president and 4 vice presidents. We are also having elections for caucus leaders and permanent committee leaders and leaders of our thematic groupings of parliamentarians. And these leaders are 3 positions: the position of chairperson, vice chairperson, and rapporteur. So it's a particularly unique session where 3 big issues have coincided.
All right, so perhaps new faces will be coming to the fore in terms of the leadership of the Bureau. What has been happening in the lead up to this in terms of nominations and getting names on the ballots?
The election for the Bureau is scheduled for Thursday, the 27th of May. And the process starts with the Office of the Clerk inviting each of the 5 caucuses to nominate 1 candidate for the position of president and 2 candidates, 1 male, 1 female, for the positions of vice president. And that call was only made yesterday by the clerk. So as I'm speaking to you, we do not formally have candidates, but there are individuals who have been campaigning maybe for the past 1 or 2 months in anticipation to being nominated by their respective caucuses. We have Honorable Chief Fortune Charumbira of Zimbabwe, who hopes to be nominated as a presidential candidate by the Southern African Regional Caucus. We have Honorable Aidara Ishata Asise, Honorable Sise from Mali, who also hopes that she will be nominated by her caucus as a candidate for president. Other than that, we have not been able to notice or identify other aspirants, but we hope to do so in the next 7 days.
All right, so I noticed that one of the things that you are very deliberate about is getting gender parity right in the PAP.
Yes.
Will you be cognizant of regional representation and making sure that throughout the Bureau that one gets an idea and a sense that your office bearers are representative of the continent?
Yes, the Bureau itself has 5 positions. 1 position for president and 4 positions for vice presidents. And the 5 must be filled 1 each from the 5 regions. So 1 must come from the north, 1 from the south, 1 from the east, 1 from the west, 1 from the central, the center of Africa. So that's to make sure that all the regions are treated equally. They are equally represented.
All right. So after they are elected and we have the new faces, what do you see as perhaps the next phase of the Pan-African Parliament? And I'm asking this because I'm going to ask about what's happened in this previous parliament. But at this stage, is it going to be up to the new office bearers to decide, or are there ongoing projects that the Pan-African Parliament will be having to fulfill?
This is a turning point for the Pan-African Parliament in many ways. And at the center of the issues that will determine the turn is the question of the mandate of the Pan-African Parliament. There are those that argue that we have not done enough, and there are those that argue that we have done very well. And I'm one of those who think that the Pan-African Parliament has done extremely well. When it was established in 2002, it had 5 years in which it should carry out only consultative and advisory role. It was not given the full powers of a parliament. You know, Peter, that a parliament by definition must make laws. But the founders of the Pan-African Parliament decided in their wisdom that the first 5 years should be reserved to a consultative and advisory role. Unfortunately, that has been the case up to now. So at this point, 19 years later, we are still focusing on advisory and a consultative role. And our critics will say it means we have not achieved as a parliament. But if you look at the matter closely, the consultative and advisory role is the feed-in to the research that is necessary for making continental laws. And we now have a wealth of information, a wealth of springboards for now diving into actual research that will immediately lead to the drafting of bills and the passing of continental laws. And that is the major challenge for the team of leaders that take over to run the 6th parliament of the parliament of the Pan-African Parliament.
Already a question that comes up for me is enforceability, because in the end, these laws are only as good as they're able to be enforced. And will the parliament have teeth to compel compliance?
I think that the teeth is really in the laws themselves. I think that the parliament should not be feared, just as I think policemen should not be feared because they are speaking harshly or they are speaking strongly. It's the force of what lies behind them, what they represent. And I think that the laws themselves are a sufficient force. Their implementability lies mainly on the will of the states, which put the parliament together and mandated it to make law. So one possible path for the coming leadership of the Pan-African Parliament is to seek that mandate from the member states the mandate to make legislation, even if it might be only in particular areas to begin with, because there are also enforceability is one problem. The other problem with a continental legislative body is that there might be areas in which it encroaches on the sovereignty of national laws, of national states. And so the member states are entitled to say, you make laws, but maybe for the next 10 years, just make laws that have to do with trade, or that have to do with health, that have to do with education or road infrastructure for the next 10 years. And maybe for now, to restrict us from entering into areas which may be controversial in terms of Pan-African law versus national law.
All right, so you said it's been 19 years in an advisory capacity. Do you think that you've been able to influence perhaps the leadership of the African Union and the heads of state? And if so, give us some examples where you feel that the Pan-African Parliament was able to put something on the table that the heads of state, when they sat in their session, said, this is our advice and this is what we've decided.
I think that our strongest, our greatest strength as an organ of the African Union, what distinguishes us from all the other organs, is that we are the only organ that is related directly to the people on the ground. And over the 19 years, we have established strong, irreversible relationships with civil society organizations, with national parliaments, and with academic institutions in different countries, and also with the diaspora. And for specific achievements, what comes to mind, for example, in terms of representation of the people of Africa, it is the Pan-African Parliament, which is largely credited for the removal of sanctions against Sudan, the travel bans by the United States against the nation of Sudan. It is the Pan-African Parliament right now continues to be part of the fight for removal of sanctions in Zimbabwe. The Pan-African Parliament has done a lot of work and a lot of interventions in illegal migrations. You know, the Africans, for example, who are caught trapped crossing the Mediterranean in search of other opportunities in Europe. The Pan-African Parliament continues to have, in line with its organ, with its slogan, continues to be the voice of Africa. Our slogan is One Africa, One Voice. And we have continued to live by that over and above the direct consultative and advisory role. We have continued to be a voice for Africa in other continents, against specific states which have imposed restrictions on movements of the African people. The Pan-African Parliament has been a champion for one border posts. Why should we have two borders between countries in Africa? And has been a major facilitator of free movement within the continent by the peoples of Africa. So recently, we saw the ratification of the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. And if we are given legislative powers, then we as a parliament will be the body that creates enabling legislation for the implementation of such continental initiatives like the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. So there is a lot that we have achieved in the 19 years, and we see it largely as a contribution, a basis, a springboard for legislation to come.
Mr. Harawa, I know that you have a busy week ahead, and hopefully we'll be able to catch up with you once the next session is done, just to get a sense of what the new era may look like. But thank you so much indeed for your insights and reflections on the years that have gone and what might be lying ahead. Thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you very much, Peter. It's been a pleasure talking to you.